So I spent some time thinking about what I should do for my next video. Game UI. User interface, or UI for short, has been there ever since humanity started interacting with computers. Or actually, we can even argue that UI has been a thing before computers, as we can define it as a plain interface between a human and a system that human is using. Now, that system might be a boat, for example, and a boat has a bunch of these interfaces that enable you to interact with it in a way. One basic example would be the helm or the boat steering wheel, a human-to-boat interface that enables you to steer the boat. So to reiterate, a user interface is a single point of interaction between a human and a system of some kind. In computing, that system is a computer. In game dev, that system is the game itself. Now, if we think about the game UI, what would be the best examples you could think of? One of the first things that comes to my mind is the game heads-up display, or HUD for short. It gives you the power to read the in-game world better. It serves as an interface between you, a player, and the game world. But that's just one example. There's so many different types of UI you might stumble upon in games that it's really hard to count. Or actually, it's not really hard to count, because the most common categorization splits UI in 4 different types based on these 2 questions. Is it in the game story, and is it in the game space? To explain this a bit better, is it in the game story would mean, is UI only visible to you as a player on the other side of your screen, or your in-game character also perceives it in some way? Is it in game space would mean, is it shown as a part of the game world itself? Or it's just kind of stitched to your screen. Based on how you answer these questions, you get these 4 different types of game UI. That would be non-diegetic, spatial, meta, and diegetic UI. Each of these have their own set of challenges, both in technical and visual aspect. Non-diegetic UI by definition is not in the game story, nor it's in the game space. The most basic example of this UI would be the classical menus. So only you as a player see them, so your character doesn't, meaning that it's not in the game story. Also, a classical menu would not be shown somewhere in the game world. This might not always be the case, but bear with me for now. The challenges you have with these systems is that they usually need good state handling, meaning that you need to know how to navigate back and forth through the menus. They can also be quite rich in data and interact with different systems to handle all sorts of crazy things, and one of the examples might be game options. Spatial UI is not in the game story, but it is in the game world. So you might be roaming around the map and you see a bunch of icons somewhere in the world that might be labeling something, like some items, for example. These are only there for you as a player to see, but your character doesn't really perceive them. Or does it? The catch with these categories is that they can easily be reinterpreted by putting them into different kinds of contexts. So in case you say the character wears some sort of an AR helmet or equipment and perceives the icons, we're actually talking about diegetic UI. I'll talk about that in just a moment. One of the biggest challenges with spatial UI is figuring out the way you want to render it from a technical standpoint. Sometimes you might want to render it in world space, sometimes you might do it in screen space. So if you need to do it in world, you lose the display resolution of the UI. If you render it in screen space, you get a full resolution, but then you need to perform calculations to know where exactly on your screen that UI should be, of course based on the world position, and it needs to match the world position at all times. You don't want your UI to be completely misplaced. Diegetic UI is a type of UI that is in the game story and it also is in the game world. A good example would be any sort of screen you see in a world. For example, if you are in the plane, the displays you can see on your plane console are basically diegetic UI. Any sort of in-world displays would fall into this same category. The last category would be meta UI. By definition, it is in the game story, but it's not in the game world really. A good example would be fire or blood on your screen. So it gives you the context of what your character is living through, but it's not really painted anywhere in the world. So no one else can see it, only you can see it on your screen. UI in general, as you can see, covers a wild variety of things. Like one day you might be tweaking a menu, the other one you're figuring out how to display different kinds of weapons and, I don't know, their ammo counts in the HUD. Naravno, sve to morate voditi brigu o lokalizaciji. Sorry, you need to make sure to architecture systems so that they support localization. Besides the width in terms of features, it's quite a challenging technical area that tackles the way to propagate all sorts of data to your screen in real time without costing too much, but also making sure that all of it looks pretty and slick. And that will be all from me today. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you like the content I'm creating, please do hit that like button. It means a lot and it's for free. Also make sure to subscribe to keep learning about game dev in general. Until the next time, enjoy.